Do you know that feeling when you've been writing a thing, a screenplay, for example, be it 3 months, 6 months, 2 years, you've poured your heart and soul into it, and now you've finally finished your first or second draft, and you hate it? You just hate the guts of it. You can't read it anymore because it's just so bad. Well, I know that feeling, and it's a completely normal feeling. Everybody hates their first draft. And that's not the point. The point is, as writers, we work on our stories, we hone our craft, we try to improve bit by bit, and we take a pickaxe and chop off the bits that aren't working yet, and then we take the mortar and fill in the bits that had holes in them. But that's easier said than done, you know? It's like, if we've poured ourselves into the story, we love it too much to know where its weak points are, to know where it falls flat. And that's where feedback comes into play. Feedback is extremely important, but it's not always easy to receive, and it's not always easy to give. So that's what this video is about. Giving and receiving good feedback. Let's get into it. A while ago I challenged myself to write a feature film script in 7 days. The video is there if you want to see it, and it's also linked in the description, but TLDR, it was fun. I managed to write the script. It only turned out to be about 60 pages though, and while it was a great exercise in getting a first draft done, it by no means gave me a finished script after 7 days. So now I've spent the last 3 months or so reworking and rewriting the script. And to know where my script was lacking and what exactly I needed to rework, rewrite, and even strike out of the script, I needed feedback. I needed good feedback, not your, oh, you know, I really liked reading your script, it has such potential, that kind of thing. No, I needed honest, harsh, but yet constructive feedback to tell me exactly where the script was still lacking. So, the $1 million question, how do you get good feedback? If it were so easy. I feel the need to tell you this is not a video for professional screenwriters. If you are a professional screenwriter, you probably have screenwriting friends or other people to give your scripts to and get feedback from. And frankly, I'm not in the position to help a professional screenwriter. This is for those that are just starting off, just like me. You know, the amateurs, the filthy casuals, you know, those of us doing it for fun, or those that want to break in and write their first few real screenplays. I can maybe give you some advice, but I doubt a pro will find any sound advice. I just feel the need to give this disclaimer, and of course everything I'm talking about is based on my personal experience. Your mileage may vary, and if you have other things you find important or things where you don't agree with me, leave them in the comments and let's talk about it. I'm just a guy though, and I'm not a professional screenwriter, so as I say, take whatever I say with a pinch of salt. Now, I think the first thing to accept is that 50% of the feedback you'll get is trash, and there's not much you can do about it. But it's the other 50% that you can influence, and let's get into that. So when you hear feedback for screenplays, you usually think of script swaps. For the uninitiated, a script swap is when two writers basically shake hands. Well, not literally, not nowadays. When they shake hands and say, you and I, we're going to read each other's script in, I don't know, the time window of 2 weeks, and then we'll give each other feedback on our scripts. Script swaps are a great way to get feedback, that's for sure. But they're also the most common one, and the one where I feel like the feedback you get is the most volatile. Sometimes it's really great, sometimes it's literally 2 lines. It's happened to me before. That's why I want to dedicate the first part of the video to exploring different, more alternative ways of getting feedback. Alright, we'll get back to script swaps towards the second half of the video though, promise. Now, if you are in a similar situation like myself, you're likely still in high school or maybe in college or wherever, and most likely the school you attend has a literature teacher. Now, literature teachers might not always be called literature teachers, but an English teacher or a German teacher or a French teacher are pretty much that, literature teachers. And while they might not be familiar with the intricacies of formatting screenplays and the like, they know their way around literature. It's what they studied as part of their language program. It doesn't matter if the literature teacher speaks German, French, Spanish, literature is literature. Of course, it varies from country and culture, but if there's something wrong with your story, I'm sure your literature teacher will be able to point it out to you. Now, you might not be taking a language course, or you might hate your English teacher, and that's fine. Usually, schools or colleges or what have you have several teachers, so pick the one that seems the most kind to you and go to that person. I find the language teachers I approach are always very enthusiastic about reading my work. They love it when students, not even their students, approach them with stuff they've written, because it's so seldom that in school you'd actually be creative, you'd not just analyze it, and they love it. They will happily take your work, even if it's 100 pages long, and they'll read it, and they'll give you feedback. Now, you might notice that the feedback your language teachers give you are along the lines of, oh, your plot is too short, or don't condense it so much, give it some room to breathe. And while that can definitely be legitimate feedback, it's also worth mentioning that most language teachers are more accustomed to higher literature, like novels and the such, where you have less of a page limit than in screenwriting. Aside from that though, in my experience, language teachers have always given me great feedback on plot, themes, and characters. Those are the three things they can give you feedback on. And the reason I value the language teachers' feedback so much is because it's not coming from the perspective of someone already in the screenwriting community. They don't know all the polish and all the weird intricacies of a screenplay, and that's a really good thing, because usually all the polish on a screenplay and all the little things that make it discernible as a screenplay story as opposed to a other form of literature story are not necessarily things that make the story better, you know? Sometimes they're just things that we do because it's part of writing a screenplay and everyone does it. Maybe they're just cinema tropes that we use because subconsciously we think we should use them because everyone else does. The literature teacher doesn't know these tropes. They don't know the formatting of the screenplay, which is why they're calling out for it. And they'll say, okay, why are you doing this thing here? You know, this doesn't make your story better. It's a weird cliche that I don't understand. Get it out of the story. And in my experience at least, this has made my scripts less mainstream. That sounds so stupid, but it makes them less stereotype and it gives it another angle. And I think that's really valuable, not only having a fresh set of eyes look at it, but also having a set of eyes look at it that isn't so closely knit into screenwriting as such. Another group of people you could show your screenplay to are friends and family. Now, the great thing about friends and family is, similarly to language teachers, they'll probably not say no. The bad thing about friends and family though is that they are either way too harsh, which is still better than being way too kind. Usually you'll just hear, "Oh sweetie, I love it. You'll become a real screenwriter one day," or "Oh my god, your screenplay was so good. I can't believe you can write like that." And feedback like that, while being a nice token of friendship, isn't actually helpful to us. Friends and family are a fun source of feedback to be consumed in moderation. Alright, now that we've exhausted our language teachers and plucked out the few people in our friend group that are willing to give us upright feedback, it is time for a script swap. Now, a script swap, as previously stated, is when two screenwriters agree to read each other's work and give feedback. Now, script swaps are notorious for bad feedback. I don't want to say usually, but oftentimes you'll get a two-liner saying, "Yeah, it's a really cool script, can't wait to see where it goes, it's got a ton of feedback. It's got a ton of potential." And you're like, awesome, this doesn't help me. So, in one of the first script swaps I did, the guy I was swapping with suggested a structure for the feedback, and this struck me as something very clever. He said he'd gotten this off of a platform called Coverfly. Haven't looked much into it, but it seemed interesting. The structure is as follows. general comments, formatting, concept, plot, characters, dialogue, and themes. This structure helps a lot in structuring your feedback. Who'd have guessed, right? Breaking it down into these subcategories puts you in a headspace while you're writing the feedback of evaluating different parts of the script at different times. Basically, dividing the script into the different sections, and it lets you analyze their script better to see exactly where they've not hit the mark and what parts they have done well, because it is also important to mention the parts they've done well. So I find for giving feedback, such a structure helps a lot. The plot section is the most important in my opinion, or at least this is where I've always gotten the most feedback, because people have a lot to say about your plot. This one guy I swapped with actually made an entire timeline of him reading the script, every scene, and a short summary of the scene for himself, so he knew exactly what the scene was about, and then his thoughts exactly as he was reading it, which was really interesting for me as the writer to read, because I could see how a reader felt about the story, what they felt, how they reacted to it, and the question marks in their head, and to see if the desired effect while writing this bit of the story actually hit home. That was a really nice thing he put into the plot section, and I think that's something I'll do the next time as well when I give feedback again. So on the side of giving feedback, this structure is really helpful because it helps you structure your thoughts, and it helps you give more qualitative feedback to your partner, basically. Also, if they're looking for some specific feedback on a specific subject, you can put more emphasis on that. Like if they say, you know what, I really don't care about the formatting, I'm going to film this myself. I mean, yes, it should be readable, but no need to be snobistic about it. That's great. Then you can leave that part out and focus more on characters or dialogue or something like that. And then you can also quote the screenplay in these subsections and put it in there. So that structure is really helpful for giving feedback. But it's also really helpful for receiving feedback, because telling your partner, hey, I have a structure, I would like you to format your feedback in this structure, tells them this is something you're taking seriously. Okay? You have a structure, you've thought this through, you know how you want the swap to go. You're not just some bloke who's gonna give back a 2-line reply, because by telling them to use the structure, you yourself are also saying, I will use the structure and I will do a good job, right? That's the promise you're making. And by making that promise and by telling them, hey, I have the structure and this is important to me, it's much more likely that you'll get good feedback. I've also had someone who said, you know what, no, I don't feel comfortable with that, I don't want to do that, and that's good. Then we stopped the swap before it came to reading each other's scripts and putting a lot of time into it. Because that's another thing with script swaps, it takes a lot of time. And if you're reaching out to people for script swaps, you should be willing to put in that time, because you're expecting someone else to do the same thing for you. I feel like you should put in 5 hours into reading the script and writing the feedback, at least, because that's the same thing you're expecting from them. And if both of you come in with the same expectations and are willing to offer the same thing to one another, only then can you both get good feedback. And that's what this is about. It's supposed to be a mutually beneficial relationship. Now, obviously, even though you have the structure and you're upfront about how serious this is to you and how serious you are about giving them good feedback, you're not always going to get good feedback. 50% of the time, your feedback is going to be trash. But I feel like it's important to still give them good feedback. Even if the feedback they gave you is absolute trash, be the bigger man. Give them good feedback, because first of all, they might change their mind and redo their feedback and put more effort, more time into it, into giving you more substantial feedback with which you can understand your own script better, first of all. Second of all, though, you're staying true to your promise by telling them in the beginning, no, I'm going to take this seriously. Even though they didn't, doesn't mean you should break your promise. That's at least important to me. Also, it gives you credit as a member of the screenwriting community where you're looking for script swaps, and we'll get into where to look for script swaps in a moment, but it gives you credit and it establishes you as someone that can be trusted with someone else's script. You won't just run around and parade on their script and then give them a 2-liner back. No, you're going to think it through and you're going to give them good feedback, and in turn, you will receive good feedback. Now, where can you look for script swaps? I found the best place by far is a subreddit called r/screenwriters. I'm on the subreddit a lot. I like it a lot. People have a lot of interesting angles and perspectives on things there, not just script swap related, but just general screenwriting stuff, so I can recommend it for that. But also for script swaps, there's a lot of young, amateurish, unknowing screenwriters on there, just like you and I. So it's a really great community for us beginners, for us amateurs, for us that are just starting off. And that's what we want. We don't want a professional screenwriter to look over our thing. First of all, the feedback they might give us may be above our heads. But second of all, I wouldn't feel it would be fair to take a professional's time like that while only being able to offer them very limited advice in the grand scale of things. So, swap with amateurs is my recommendation. On r/screenwriters, you can just make a post, put your logline if you have one, or otherwise a short synopsis of your script in there and say, hey, I'm looking for people, will you swap with me? And then they say yeah, and they comment on it, and then you shoot them a direct message, a DM. And you get to talking a bit, you listen to their script first, listen to that idea. If it's something that is going to bore you to death because you do not like horror, tell them that. There's no point in going through a script swap if you're not willing to read their script and be engaged by it. If you know right off the bat the script is not going to engage you, don't do the swap. That's what I recommend. If you guys get along well, either exchange emails, but I have found that people aren't so comfortable doing that, or otherwise send them a Google Drive link with the PDF of your script in there, and then give each other 2 weeks. 2 weeks has been a good time frame for me, although I've noticed that a lot of people are much quicker than that. I've gotten feedback back within 3 days, and it was really good feedback. Now, obviously, it's not always like that, and sometimes they need the 2 weeks, but I feel like being strict on the 2 weeks thing is important because it just meanders out into a thing where you haven't heard from the guy in like 4 weeks. It's a bit of a shame. Over time, you might even find people who you get along with just fine and who give you great feedback that you'll come back to them, and you'll create relationships with these people, and you'll swap scripts in the future as well, and then you might not even need r/screenwriters or your forum of choice anymore, and you'll just have their email or their contact, and then you'll send them your thing and tell them, hey, what do you think of this? I did these and these changes, and they'll come back to you. And the same for them, they'll send you their work and you get back to it. That's a really great thing. Building up a network of like-minded writers who you can help and benefit from at the same time is a really wholesome thing to do. So, in short, be sincere about the feedback you give, and then you shall receive good feedback yourself. Sounds easy, you don't always get the results, but at least I feel through doing this, you get better results than just doing any garbage and treating your partners like trash. Script swapping is really something that relies on reciprocity, and you have to be sincere in what you're willing to give, and then hopefully, more often than not, the other person will too. I naively say that knowing full well it's not always the case, but at least more than otherwise. And that's all I have to say on the subject of script swapping and getting feedback on your writing. If you have something you'd like to share with everyone, please write it down in the comments and we'll have a discussion about it. If you enjoyed the video or learned something by it, I'm happy. That's exactly what this video was for, and I'm glad I could help. If you'd like to see the video of my 7-day script writing adventure, I've put the link in the description. I don't know, I think it's like 15 minutes long if you have the time. Might be interesting to you, might also not be. Until the next time, I hope you have a wonderful week. I'll see you guys soon. Take care. You motherfucker.